My name is John Passfield, and the topic of this video will be Video 4, Bethune in Canada. Here's the cover of the novel, Bethune, the only person alive in the world, a novel by John Passfield. The picture is from a painting by the historical doctor Norman Bethune, and I think he captures his personality quite well in this painting. Here's a summary of the entire novel from the back cover. A young Canadian doctor, Norman Bethune, sets up a practice which he hopes will lead to money and prestige. However, his social conscience leads him on a journey through the Canada of the Great Depression, the Spain of the Spanish Civil War, and the China of the Chinese Civil War and the Japanese invasion. Ultimately, the journey becomes a quest to understand the world in which he has found himself living, to develop a compassionate response to that world, and to discover the essence of himself as a human being. The structure of the novel is this. There are 16 chapters. Chapters 1 to 5 deal with Bethune in Canada, and that'll be the subject of this video. Chapters 6 to 10 are Bethune in Spain. That will be another video. Chapters 11 to 15, Bethune in China. That'll be, again, another video. And then there is a chapter, not a death chapter, but he gets infected in chapter 16. And he believes, in the last thought segment of the novel, that since he's feeling a little better, then in a few days he'll be up again, working really hard to help people as a physician in the midst of the Chinese Civil War and, of course, Japanese invasion. So the Bethune in Canada cycle gave me some problems in the planning of this novel because the main character's life seemed to be all bits and pieces, moving from city to city and from hospital to hospital, tuberculosis and recovery, the 2 marriages and 2 divorces from the same woman, temporary harmonies leading to inevitable disharmonies, his failed attempt to change the medical delivery system in Canada, all coming to nothing, it would seem. I saw Bethune as a man of idea-action, but where were the 5 strong action scenes that I needed for my 5 Canadian chapters? Well, it was only after I'd written the Spain action chapters and was working on the China action chapters that I realized that the bits and pieces were the point about his life in Canada, that the main character is on a quest to find the ideal situation in which to raise all of his personal attributes to the highest level in order to be able to be his best possible self in response to the world as he understands it to be and as he understands his ideal response to that world should be. The bits and pieces failure of his quest for idea unity in his life is why he decides at the end of this section, these 5 first chapters, to leave Canada. So it was hard to figure out how to write about Bethune in Canada with this idea that he was a man of idea-action, action-idea, that he always put his ideas into action, and all of his actions were based on an idea, and yet he just seemed to be drifting around somehow. And so that became the point. So here's Chapter 1, Canada 1. There are 5 Canadian chapters. I'll only read from chapters 1, 3, and 5 to keep the video to a certain length. And there's 8 segments of action in each chapter, and I'll only read from 4 of those 8 in each chapter. Just not because those passages aren't worthy, but just to keep the length to a reasonable one. Here's how the novel starts. Chapter 1, Canada 1, page 1. Setting up a new practice. Stratford, Ingersoll, Aylmer, Detroit. Changing cities from time to time as the spirit moves. Setting my glass of wine down on my desk as I stand on a chair and hammer a nail. Adjusting my diploma on my office wall. Cranking up the Victrola. 2 or 3 of our favorite songs. Francis and I, that's his wife, whirling around the desk. Vernon and Irene Castle, the elan of a fancy dress ball. The patients will pour in through the front door. The secretary will take their names. You have an appointment, I presume? You have your checkbook with you? The doctor is busy with a patient, but will be with you soon. The bustling nurse, the shelves of pills, the table with instruments sterilized, many of which the doctor has invented himself. A pause for a sip of wine, then up on the chair to straighten the crooked diploma. The Victrola chuckles and chortles. Francis and I in love, whirling around the room at a fancy dress ball. Well, a great start to his place in the medical profession, young Dr. Norman Bethune. And he has a couple of dreams, two opposing dreams, as it turns out, but they seem to be running in parallel tracks early in his professional life. And here's one: to build a practice which will make me the envy of every doctor in my profession, to be able to enjoy the finest wines and hang the best paintings on my walls, to have Francis and I take romantic trips to Paris, to travel to Switzerland in the winter and to stay in a fancy chalet, spend the whole day skiing down the powdery slopes of the Alps, a blazing fireplace and a glass of the finest champagne, the firelight as it sparkles in Francis's eyes, to be known as an innovator, to sweep the stodgy old fools aside, daring, imaginative, innovative, curing a new disease or inventing a new procedure, driving a fine roadster and lecturing on my innovations at learned conferences, to be rich, successful, envied, to be at the pinnacle of my profession and never look down. Well, it's the Depression of the 1930s around the world and certainly here in Canada. But he was on that track. He was inventing, or at least developing, new procedures and making innovations with the equipment, the Bethune rib shears and so on, and others. But he had a second dream, and here's a little bit about that. Treating patients in my home, letting the secretary go. Without an office, I couldn't justify keeping her on. Asking Frances to answer the door, but it's not for her. I enjoy teaching at the college, like to keep it relaxed and real. We walk past bread lines to get to the campus, asking the students what they've noticed on the way to class. What does this tell you of the state of medicine at the present time? I like to give their heads a shake and hear them rattle. Not all students take to my lectures. Some of them think of me as a lefty. One of them had me called on the carpet as a commie one time. One of them told me, sort of Voss, that his father, as a doctor, had never, even once, thought of medicine as a noble profession, or of serving the public at a sacrifice to oneself. To his father, it's all about climbing the ladder of wealth. Well, to Bethune in one dream, it is about climbing the ladder of wealth and prestige, but to young Dr. Bethune in the other dream, it's serving the public, often without remuneration. It's the 1930s depression. Nobody has any money. And you help people and you say, no, it's okay. You don't have to pay me. And so these two dreams are moving along, as I say, on parallel tracks. And then both dreams are derailed. And I dealt with this at length in video one, Physician Heal Thyself. But here's the onset of this derailment of the two dreams. End of chapter 1, Canada 1. Shortness of breath. This has never happened before. At times I can barely drag myself through the day. Put it off for a couple of weeks, mind over matter, never known it to happen before. I always think of myself as a workhorse. Maybe the stress about paying the bills, long days and longer evenings, never a night to relax at home. Frances isn't the easiest person to live with, though, mind you, she often says the same about me. Can't seem to get through the day. Can't deny that it's getting worse. Examined by a colleague, collar open, shirt removed, tap on the chest and a cough, an x-ray of the lungs. Tuberculosis of moderate extent, sanitarium treatment. Great strides have been made of late. Favorable outlook for recovery if all goes well. That's ridiculous. I'm the doctor. I can't afford to abandon all this. I've barely gotten started on my career. Well, as I said, chapter 2 then deals with this tuberculosis problem, and I called it in the other video, that's not mentioned in the novel, Physician Heal Thyself or Patient Heal Thyself. Well, in a way he does. You can see that if you read the novel or watch that video. Well, he is cured of tuberculosis, and he does move on. Again, searching for this ideal situation in which to be his best possible self and do the best for all the other people in society. Page 19, Chapter 3, Canada 3. Moving to Montreal. A lease on a new apartment and a new lease on life. City of culture, vibrancy, hockey, smoked meat, and the finest of wines. With ski slopes 40 miles north when the snow starts to fall. My health is excellent. An x-ray shows no disease, only healed scars. Appointed chief surgeon at the Royal Victoria Hospital by Dr. Archibald, whose specialty is pulmonary surgery. Part chest clinic and part research. When I told old Archie I was starving, he offered me a fellowship at $1,500 a year. The old fellow's a little stodgy, but so far we get along. As long as he lets me do what I want to do. I think I'll write a letter to Frances. She must be tired of her family by now. I'll ask her to come and join me in Montreal. So as long as he lets me do what I want to do, well, let's see how that works out. Page 21. Spending hours in surgery, spending hours in cafes, spending hours at meetings, dances, parties, feeling at odds and ends, reading all kinds of books, whatever anyone mentions as interesting, and then in italics the titles and topics of some of these books he's reading. The Present and Future Organization of Medicine, I Change Worlds, Moscow Dialogues, The Communist Manifesto, The Coming Struggle for Power, New Masses, New Frontier, Waiting for Lefty, the Oxford Book of English Verse, specializing for Bethune and William Blake. Writing all kinds of things, whatever occurs to me in the middle of the night, writing a little poetry, and then some lines from the historical Dr. Norman Bethune's poetry. The whole world is emptied of delight, like a cup turned upside down. Writing a radio play, The Patient's Dilemma, or Modern Methods of Treating Tuberculosis. Painting alone in the evenings, Night Operating Theater, the title of one of his paintings. The Operating Room at the Sacré-Cœur. A Portrait in Oils of Frances, by memory, not together right now. Self-Portrait, 1935. Well, there it is. So he's searching, and one of the things he does is write, and he could have been, and he was, an excellent writer, but didn't spend all of his time doing that, since he was such a man of action, and an excellent painter, but didn't spend all of his time doing that as a career, because he was a man of action. Someone remarking that there's pain and fear in the eyes. Talking with all kinds of people, socialists and communists and everyone in between. A clash of social ideas. Finding more questions than answers. Is there anything other than science to put things right? So the world is wrong, he feels. Canada's a wonderful country, but it's not perfect. There are a lot of people during the Depression who are struggling. One of the things they can't do is pay for medical assistance. He's a doctor. What do you do? Well, he wasn't the kind of person who thought, well, I'll just organize my life according to my beliefs. He wanted to reorganize society according to his beliefs. Page 23. What's going on here in Canada? We have a preventable epidemic. 48,000 people contract tuberculosis every year. Poverty, poor food, unsanitary conditions, contact with infectious foci, overwork, mental fatigue. Ask the banker if these are conditions which can be changed. My patients have no jobs. 1/10 of the workers in Canada are unemployed. They live on government handouts of $1.20 a week, 80 cents per child. There's a rich man's tuberculosis and a poor man's tuberculosis. Medicine is practiced as a luxury trade. We sell bread at the price of jewels. Most people can't afford to stay alive. They huddle shivering under blankets when I visit them in their homes. A few kind words and some wise advice, a skinning hand reaching out with 2 or 3 coins, their situations remain unchanged. I look them in the eyes and I know that they will die. Their agony is contagious. When one of them dies, a part of me dies too. And then page 27, which is the last of this, of chapter 3, Canada 3. A voice, kind of a double voice in his mind, puzzling out this inactivity on his part, or at least activity that's not productive. Don't tell me Canada's failed. How can you think such a thing? Canada's growing. Don't write her obituary yet. She's young and still unformed. The Garden of Eden's still unplowed. Oh, Laurier was right. The 20th century belongs to Canada. Look at these kids as they work on their paintings. They don't want to hear you talk like that. Put your cynicism aside and roll up your sleeves. You can sit out inside and complain about the weather, or you can go outside and shovel snow. What we need is organization. The people who run things are smarter than we are. The drug they dispense is the drug of ideas. We all know what Canada needs, same as any other country. Most of the others are too far gone. I could agree with you if we weren't living in Montreal. Look, here, settle down. Talk is cheap, work is hard. Let's drop this whole conversation. I have a few things in mind, but tonight is for fun. In the meantime, have another drink and watch the kids. That's what I'm going to do. In their art, you can see the future, both good and bad. Their art is asking us what their future is going to be. Well, he'd have people, not just from the medical profession, from all ranks of society come, and the adults would drink and talk about society, what's wrong with Canada in the Depression, and their kids would come and their kids would paint. And yet Bethune feels, well, this isn't enough. This isn't really enough. Well, then he settles down to be kind of a workhorse, and he joins all of these groups that are trying to make society better. And that'll be chapter 4, but I won't read from that. Okay, you go and talk to cabinet ministers about the delivery of medicine in Canada, and they're not really interested in making changes. You go to conferences of doctors and you speak to them about making changes in the delivery of medicine in Canada. No, it's a depression and the patients don't have a lot of money, but we'll get through this. We'll be okay. Let's stay as we are. Well, not for him. Other people really worked gallantly to improve conditions in Canada, not only in medicine, but in many areas of life. But it wasn't in his personality to kind of work within a group, making inches of progress at a time. So what to do? Well, it all kind of falls apart in Canada, and his own ideas reach a kind of an apotheosis, I guess. This isn't for me. Here we are. So skipping chapter 4, here's chapter 5, Canada 5, page 39. The falling out with Archibald. For sure I lost a gamble. I had to amputate the leg. At the meeting I admitted to every mistake. But don't he operate on the safe ones in which a surgeon takes no risks? That's not for me. Life to me is more like a battlefield. It goes back to my time in the war. Take the risk and accept the consequences. Nothing new will be done by surgeons in Montreal. Nothing good will be done by me if I stay where I am. And then leaving something out, not only all of his deepening imagery thoughts, but even some of the action sections. We go to page 43. How can I look a patient in the eye and ask for money? It goes against the Hippocratic oath. Family of 5, holes in the shoes, patches in the pants, faded dresses, children shy, clutching the skirts of the mother and holding the father's hand? Is the dime on the table theirs, or is it mine? They need food, they need shelter, some crumbs on the plate and some coals in the stove. I need paintings, fine wines, and a roadster. Each of us eyeing the table and wondering who gets the dime. Well, that was not satisfactory for Bethune. Kept him in agony, in fact. Page 45. Children painting on the floor of my apartment. Brushes, sheets of paper, cans of paint, pictures of trees and clouds and sunshine, pictures of faces, dirty or clean, pictures of buildings looking like canyons. How much am I needed here? I pay the rent and welcome the children. I watch them paint while I fume and drink. What kind of world is waiting outside? The children paint while the adults whisper of a war in Spain. Is that a scratching sound I hear? All eyes turn to the door. Better clutch your drinks and pray. Do these children have any idea what lurks outside? And then again, this voice that speaks to him. And this is the last segment of the 5 Canadian chapters. He's going to plunge into something very, very different at the end of it. I don't know why you were born in Canada. There's nothing happening here. Career in shreds, marriage in tatters, too rich to starve and too poor to enjoy. Reading books and discussing ideas. Waving your fees each time you look agony square in the face. Sitting and painting in your apartment after the children have all gone home. Drawing up health plans that no one in government bothers to read. Speaking to doctors who listen politely and then yawn and shake their heads. The medical profession barricading the door. The world in turmoil across the Atlantic. People willing to die for a cause. The war of the worlds now being fought by the peasants in Spain. Well, I won't read from chapter 6 Spain, although I will in another video, but Madrid is under siege. Suddenly, we're in Spain already. Well, that's Bethune, eh? Thought and action. If he thought he should be in Spain, then a few seconds later, in terms of turning the page in this novel, he's in Spain. So here's some notes that I wrote, excuse my voice, while writing the novel and polishing it. Here's one of them. I don't treat historical subjects or contemporary subjects any differently. Perhaps all of my characters see themselves as contemporary and everyday, while the patterns of the imagery of their thought processes reveal their situations and their responses to be mythical and timeless. This is why I write novels which combine image units which are written in the language and the idiom of contemporary prose novels, but which are encased in patterns which are formal in the manner of older literature. This is my way of aligning the timeless, mythical, patterned, poetic, and the contemporary, casual, random, everyday prose elements in a single piece of literature. So I write to form, but there's a reason for that. We're all individuals, we all have individual lives, but our lives fall into various patterns, and these patterns are mythical. They've happened not in detail, but in form to people in earlier times, and they will happen again in future times. And I want to capture that meeting of the contemporary and the timeless. Here's another note. Quite a fascinating exercise. Reading over the Canadian section of a Bethune biography and having double thoughts about it. One, that the frequent changes of place and life experience, the superficial nature of the information, and the everydayness of a life make it a difficult topic for me to turn into a novel. And two, my sense that I know how to extract the imagery that I want for deepening imagery, how to select some places and events and ignore others, and how to infuse these images with the personality of the main character, Dr. Norman Bethune. So there's a multiplicity of information about certainly recent people. Older history books are much thinner, you might say, in detail. But I think I've learned how to kind of leave what I don't need and take what I do need, and then build image patterns based on that. To continue this note, it's quite a fascinating process. I believe there's a great value in working from nonfiction. There is the everydayness of my own life and the everydayness of Bethune's life on the one hand. There's also the mythical idea pattern of my life. Not that I'm special. Everybody is living, in a sense, a mythical life, living a pattern that's been lived before and will be lived again. And the mythical idea pattern of Bethune's life. So these are the 4 elements which will give me the text of the novel. So the everydayness of two people, myself and Bethune, the mythical patterns of the lives of two people, myself and Bethune. Out of that will come the novel. Well, that was written, of course, as I was working on it. It is now a novel. Now, the novel is Bethune, the only person alive in the world, a novel by John Passfield, and you can find that on Amazon. You can also find it at rocksmillspress.com, ROCKSMILLSPRESS.com. There's more information there, and that's my publisher's website. So you can buy it through Amazon or through my publisher. More information about the novel at my own website, which is johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca. There's 2 free books there, free. They're book length, they're both free. One is a notebook. As I'm planning, researching, structuring, writing, and polishing the novel, I write notes. Then as I've already said, polishing, as I look back on the novel, trying to make it better, I write notes. So one's a notebook, one's a journal. Go to the top of my website, johnpassfield.ca, click on either notebooks or journals, then go down and click on the icon. There's 2 free books, as I say, book length and without money being asked for. And hope you have a look, hope you enjoy them. Lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.